This is The Sixth Sense. I'm Jarif, but today my brother Jazib is not here. Today I'm going to be talking about the skeletal system. The first thing we need to know is that the skeletal system is divided into two parts, the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton. The axial skeleton consists of the skull, the vertebrae, and the ribs. It pretty much means anything that's on the center or the axis of the body. Appendicular skeletons consist of the limbs, so our arms and legs, and the pelvis. So first let's talk about what a bone is made of. Every bone has a covering known as the periosteum. After this covering comes the calcium part of the bone, which is the hard part and provides the structural integrity to the bone. This is known as the diaphysis. Below this is the bone marrow. This bone marrow, when we're young, consists of blood-making cells, and these cells help make blood for the body. As we grow older, these cells are replaced by fat cells or yellow adipose tissue. If you've seen photos of bones, you might realize that especially long bones have a central stick, which is actually known as a shaft. On either end is a knobbed kind of thing, which is known as the epiphysis. These epiphyses actually join into other bones so that we can move each individual bone. So let's talk about the types of bones. The most common type of bone that you'll normally see in pictures is the long bone. A really good example is the thigh bone or the femur. Another example is the humerus, which is this bone. The other types of bones include the short long bone, which look very similar to long bones except they're much smaller. These include the phalanx, which is the finger bones. As we can see on each finger, there's 3 of these bones. Other types of bones include irregular bones and flat bones. Flat bones include the bone you can feel by touching over here. This is known as the scapula. Another type of bone is a type of bone that is formed by nodes. This means that when we're young, the bone originally starts out as a node, and as we grow older, it forms a bone. A very famous example is the kneecap, also known as the patella. When we're young, we don't have a kneecap, and this is because the nodes are not old enough to form the calcium and form the kneecap. But as we grow older, the calcium builds up and we have this feature in our body. This is very important because this joint is the one that supports most of our weight. It also helps, so when we fall or something, it's very common that we fall on our knees, and this helps support these important joints. One of the most important bones in our body is the skull. The lower skull consists of the upper mandibular and the lower mandibular, which basically means the upper jaw and the lower jaw. An interesting fact is that the lower jaw is actually the only bone in the skull that can move. In fact, you can feel the joint over here if you put your fingers underneath your ears and open your mouth like this. You can kind of feel it moving up and down. Now the upper skull consists of the frontal bone, which is the bone that makes up the forehead. If you've heard of the word temple, you might know this over here. This is the bone that is called the tempora. Behind the tempora, over here, is the parietal bone. This makes up the side of the head. At the back of the head is the occipital bone, which is actually one of the largest bones in our skull. It also extends up to the base of our skull, so you can't feel it over here, but it's pretty much underneath your neck. Now, there is also a large hole at the base of the skull. This is where the spinal cord connects from the brain and into the backbones. These backbones are also a very important part of the skeletal system. The vertebrae are of 25 bones. Of this, each of them are named differently depending on where it is in the body. The 7 ones in the neck are known as the cervical bones. The ones in the thorax are known as the thoracic bones, or the thoracic vertebra, and the ones in the abdomen are known as the lumbar bones, or the lumbar vertebra. Each of these is named so that we can find out what organs are in what section of the body. So for example, in the neck, as it's a cervical bone, it will be C1, C2, C3, and so forth. In the thoracic bones, it would be T1, T2. In the lumbar, it will be L1, L2, L3, and yeah. Now the tailbone is also known as the coccyx, which is spelled COCCYX. An interesting fact is that the first two bones of the spinal cord are differently shaped. This is because it needs to hold onto the skull so that it provides support. What you might notice is that the vertebra is actually curved. This is so that it can absorb shock from if any weight is placed upon the head. One more thing about the spinal cord is that it's inside the backbone, and that there's a large hole that goes all the way through from C1 all the way up to L1. The spinal cord does not reach until the lower lumbar bones or the lower abdominal vertebra. The bones at the nerves that come out of the end of the spinal cord are L1. All of these are the ones that supply the legs. I hope you learned something. And remember, knowledge is a sixth sense. Please subscribe to the channel and like the video too. Talk to you later. Bye.